Hey everyone, Luke Garrity here from the Sacramental, Charismatic, and I have a package I got in the mail from a friend of mine named Andrew Williams that I'm going to be reading this book. He just wrote it. If you've been following this channel for a while, you'll know that we've had Andrew on as a guest on our podcast. He has a PhD. He's focused a lot on baptism from a Pentecostal perspective. Really great thinker, great pastor, great preacher, and great author. And so I'm going to open this book. I actually don't even know what book this is. I'm pretty sure I probably saw him post somewhere on social media about it, but I couldn't remember the topic. I think it's on prayer, but we're going to open it up right now because I'm going to read it and then I'm going to write a book review. But whatever the topic of this book is right now, maybe we'll chat about it for a minute. Okay, it is on prayer. Reconstructing prayer, beyond destructing your faith. Great topic, first of all. As you probably know, the topic of deconstruction has been really popular the last year or two. Actually, it's been a bigger topic for a while now, but definitely a smart way to I guess, address the topic of prayer. But anyway, so it has got some really great endorsements from Cheryl Bridges-Johns, who is a well-known Pentecostal theologian. Yeah, it looks awesome. So here's the back of the book, kind of explaining it. It says, in the West, many Christians are deconstructing and or doubting their faith. As a result, some people seeking to follow Jesus have become disillusioned with prayer, perhaps even skeptical about it. And yet there is still a great desire and longing for connection with God. What is needed then is a reconstructed account of prayer, one that is theologically robust, pastorally honest, and spiritually wise. Andrew Williams seeks to provide such an account by providing meditations on childlike prayers in hope that it might open new ways of understanding specific issues related to Christian faith. I can't wait to read this book. That just right there is the selling point for me. And the thing I like about Andrew is that he really does a great job of threading the needle between a theologian, an academic theologian who has studied a lot, he's read a lot, he's a well-versed in theological topics, and then he's also a pastor, and so he's doing a lot of what is near and dear to my heart of trying to thread that needle between pastor and theologian. And then I also really like how this topic is about discipleship. It's about one's own personal faith journey. And you know, deconstruction obviously is a very popular topic. It's become really popular due to the stories that many really popular people who have large platforms have taken, which, you know, is kind of frustrating in some ways because I'm not sure our deconstruction is something that's always helpful when we go public with it, but that's another conversation for another time because obviously it's also important to be transparent about where we're at with our relationship with God. But oftentimes I've noticed that people who have these big platforms just get larger platforms when they start deconstructing. But at any rate, you know, the topic of prayer is interesting because I was just talking to some friends in a Bible study that I host about how in my own journey, you know, I started out in my early 20s, and I spent a lot of time in prayer and just focused, sustained hours in prayer. In fact, you know, when I first started trying to dedicate like a day of my week to prayer, I would actually say, this is what I'm going to do today. And I remember the first day I tried, I actually had a prayer journal, had written down every prayer request I knew, and I was ready to go. And I was like, for the next few hours, I'm going to pray. And I was hoping to pray from, you know, I think it was like 9 in the morning until 12 in the afternoon when I took lunch. But I started praying, and I prayed literally through that list. I prayed for every person I could think of, every person that was on the list, every situation I knew of. And I mean, I just went to town. I went and prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed. And after I kind of reached the end of my prayer, you know, time, I was like, oh my gosh, I think I might have just prayed for like 6 or 7 hours. It's probably late afternoon. And I looked down at my clock and it had been like 22 minutes or something like that. And, you know, I think prayer can be challenging at times, you know, to think of, and we're just trying to clock in hours. But when we approach the topic relationally and think about it as an opportunity to communicate with God, and I always like to think of communication as a two-way street where we communicate to God, but we also take the time to listen to God. it becomes possible, I think, when we take this lifestyle of prayer approach, and we can actually live out what Paul talks about in 1 Thessalonians 5 when he wrote, "Pray without ceasing," or as the NLT translation approaches it, it says, "Never stop praying." And so you can have a lifestyle of prayer if you enter into a more dialogue, conversational model of relationship with God. And so I've been wanting to actually become more faithful in my prayer life. And so I'm really excited about reading this book. As you can see, it's not very thick. I mean, it looks like it's going to be a fairly easy read. And not easy in the sense of not thoughtful, because that's one thing I'd like about Andrew is that he's a very thoughtful person. But the inside of the book, he even signed it to Luke. Wow, that's great. Awesome. Thank you, Andrew. Also, check out Andrew if you haven't yet. I mean, he's a great guy. Anyway, so these are the chapters just really quickly. Chapter 1, God is great and good. Chapter 2, guests of God. Chapter 3, God and everything. Chapter 4, protected by God. Chapter 5, delivered by God. Chapter 6, surrounded by God. And then he has a postscript, what's next? Like I said, can't wait to read this book. Highly recommend that you get it. I haven't even read it, but I'm positive it's going to be great. After I finish this book, I'll do a quick review and probably write something a little bit on prayer too to accompany this book, because I think it's going to be a really good read. So anyway, hey, if you haven't yet subscribed to my Substack that I'm writing on, I write alongside Wes McLaughlin. We are the co-hosts of the Sacramental podcast, the Sacramental Charismatic podcast, I should say. Go ahead and do that. We're going to release content more regularly. I took a couple-year hiatus trying to navigate being a pastor in the global pandemic, and then just getting out of the rhythm of writing regularly and trying to get back into that. So we'd love to have you subscribe there. You can also support this channel and help us create more content by becoming a paid subscriber, which there's a couple different options to do that too. So I want to say thanks to everybody that's already done that. And for those of you who just have subscribed for the free content, you're more than welcome. I hope it blesses you, and we'll talk to you soon.